Six bands that I think are still going to be around 50 years from now, talked about, listened to in 2075. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to Tim Conley Drums. Today we are going to talk about the future a little bit, the past and the future actually. We're going to talk about what are six bands. Everybody does top fives, top tens. I like to be a little different. I'm doing a top six with honorable mentions. Top six bands are going to be around and talked about 50 years from now in the year 2075. There's only a few bands that are still going to be talked about and are going to be around 50 years from now. Now, some would say, well, we still talk about Mozart. We still talk about Chopin, Haydn, Beethoven, etc., these incredible classical artists. But there's a reason why we still talk about them. First of all, the music is amazing. Classical music is brilliant. Now, I know that this is a drum channel, and how can a drummer like classical music? Well, everything we do in music today, all the rules of music, everything that we do, all the breaking of the rules of music come from classical music, Bach, and how they set up the structure of melody and harmony, written music. It all comes from those brilliant classical artists. So we have to look to the past to think about looking to the future. If we look back 50 years ago, the music was incredible. The bands of that time, 1975, there was some truly incredible artists and incredible music happening in 1975 that we still listen to today. So that tells me there is some hope despite AI and despite a lot of the garbage music that's coming out today, that 50 years from now, these six bands plus honorable mentions will still be listened to, talked about, and you're still going to hear them on the radio. And there's always going to be a young generation discovering all these, what would be ancient music 50 years from now. Number six, Pink Floyd. What can I say about Pink Floyd? Probably one of the most influential bands of all time. Basically started a genre of music with progressive rock. They lasted and endured and are still listened to today despite their roots back in the 60s. They have incredible songs, incredible musicianship, so unique. Nobody sounds like them. You know, they're just one of those bands that stand the test of time. And the reason they stand the test of time is because they're so different, they're so brilliant. The music is so enriching and vibrant. There's so much to take in when you listen to Pink Floyd. It's like a novel. It's like reading a novel and the novel keeps changing and there's hills and valleys and lakes and rivers and oceans and mountains, and that's a Pink Floyd song. That's how I see it anyways. Number five, rock and roll. In my opinion, the kings of rock and roll, AC/DC. I can't tell you how many times kids 7, 8, 9, 10 come into my drum room for lessons and they want to learn how to play Back in Black. You Shook Me All Night Long, TNT. These are classic songs that just seem to never go away. Again, another band rooted years ago, rooted in the 70s, AC/DC, an Australian band, but they never go away. They're still touring to this day. Old guys, but they're still touring. Only two of them are actually members, actual members, original members. Well, technically only one, because if you consider Bon Scott dying and then Brian Johnson taking over. So technically Brian is not a founding member, so we've only got Angus left in AC/DC. But those rock songs, classic. Like I said, the kids always want to learn them. They're fairly easy to play, but not as easy as you think, because AC/DC had their own extremely unique sound that only they can create. Try singing like Brian Johnson or even Bon Scott, the old stuff. Very difficult to sing AC/DC. Raspy, earthy, organic. I mean, they're so unique, and they're going to be another band that kids will want to learn how to play Back in Black on the guitar and on the drums 50 years from now. Mark my words. Number 4, Queen. Queen, one of the most iconic and incredible bands, again, from the 70s. A lot of these bands I'm talking about here are older bands. Another classic band from the 70s. The second band I really got interested in was Queen. And I remember buying their album. I can't remember the name of the album. I'll put it down here, but it's the one with the robot on the cover. I think that came out around 77 or something like that. I was around 12 years old and I bought that album. It's one of the very first albums that I actually ever bought with my own money. You know, We Are the Champions, We Will Rock You. Classic, classic Queen. Freddie Mercury, one of the greatest frontmen of all time. That's another band that I'm always teaching kids how to play various songs from Queen. They're iconic, they're legendary, they're never going to go away. People will still be listening to and talking about Queen, Freddie Mercury, and their amazing collection of music, you know? I mean, Queen is still around. Of course, Freddie died years and years ago in the 80s, but Queen's still around. So Pink Floyd, technically still around, but they do their separate things, right? It's not Pink Floyd. It's the two guys from Pink Floyd off doing their own thing. I don't think they're currently touring, but I know they've recently done something, one of them anyways. Queen, still touring, different singer obviously, but Queen is still on the minds of people. You still hear Queen on the radio all the time. Documentary that came out a couple years ago about Queen, just a fantastic documentary. I can't remember the name of the actor that played the part of Freddie Mercury, but holy geez, did he ever look like him? I couldn't believe it. I thought it was Freddie Mercury when I first saw it. I'm like, how did they get Freddie out of the grave to reenact his story? That's how great that actor was. He really played him well. All right, number 3, the most modern band in the list, Nirvana. Incredible. They changed the 90s. They started grunge. They changed the way that we record music. A lot of people probably don't know that, but Dave Grohl and the guys in that band changed the way that drums are recorded. They got away from all the drum machines. They brought back real rock sounds. Open drumming, meaning that the drums that were previously so heavily dampened down, so heavily muffled, and so heavily compressed, that started to change. And it was Dave Grohl and the band, the producer of Nirvana, that decided we want to go for a rawer 70s, 60s to 70s rock sound where the drums and the guitars are much more vibrant and much more alive, and Nirvana was responsible for that. Now, I love Nirvana. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. Another band that I'm constantly teaching, not just me, but I hear around the other drum rooms when I'm teaching, I hear all kinds of Nirvana songs being taught by all the teachers. So it's almost like AC/DC, Queen, not so much Pink Floyd, but definitely AC/DC, Queen, and Nirvana, very, very popular amongst young people to still learn how to play their songs. And I don't see that dying. I could be wrong, but I just don't see the music of Nirvana going away anytime soon. I'm almost positive you're still going to hear it on the radio. You're still going to hear it out and about when you're out on the streets and whatnot. And of course, you're going to hear it in your home because people are still going to be playing it. And I know that in drum rooms around and guitar rooms around the world, in lesson rooms, you're still going to be hearing Nirvana played by students and taught by teachers. That's my prediction. Number 2, Led Zeppelin. Come on. What do I have to say about Led Zeppelin? The most incredible rock band of all time, really. Bonham, unbelievable drummer, unbelievable songs. They changed rock music. the way that they recorded, they would record in airport hangars to get that reverb effect. They would record in stairwells to create a tighter reverb effect. I mean, they were studio pioneers in terms of how they would get effects when the effects didn't actually exist. They found places to record songs and do things and create their own effects just by the spaces that they used to record in. And they're another band that I'm constantly teaching. I'm always teaching those 16th note triplets on Good Times, Bad Times. I'm always teaching the incredible feels in Kashmir, the Wanton song with that incredible Ludwig Black Beauty snare sound. I mean, that's another band that we as music teachers are always teaching the songs of. And I can't see Zeppelin going away. Zeppelin's one of those bands like Nirvana where every generation seems to find them. You know, around the age of 12 to 15 to 16, everybody's all of a sudden they hear Nirvana and then they want to check out the catalog. They hear Zeppelin, you know, they hear rock and roll, or they hear Fool in the Rain, and it's like, what is this? This is incredible. Just like they did back in the early days. Led Zeppelin's one of those bands where when you hear them, it doesn't matter what, like if it was 1970 or it's 2025, Led Zeppelin is one of those bands, when you first hear them, when you're a 12 or 13-year-old kid, it blows your mind. It blew my mind back in the 70s, and it blows the students that I teach now in 2025. It blows their minds as well. All right, so before I get to number one, we're going to talk about quickly 3 honorable mentions that I think didn't make the top 6, because only 6 can make it, but these 3 bands are also going to be around for a long, long time. Metallica. I mean, Metallica that's another band that I do a lot of teaching. I always teach the kids how to play various Metallica songs. Kids know about Metallica, because I always ask kids, name me 3 bands that you know of. Not individual artists, but name me a band that you're aware of. Say a 12-year-old kid. They always name Metallica. That's one of the ones they always name. So Metallica has an ever-enduring, 13-year-old kid finds Metallica and hears that riff on Enter Sandman, and they're hooked. Then they go through the catalog and they discover Metallica in its entirety and realize, wow, they have got a huge catalog of amazing music. Enter Sandman, of course, was their top 40 hit, but they've got a massive catalog of really great songs, other than just Enter Sandman. Enter Sandman is what I call the transitional song. I let them listen to it, and the riff catches them, the drum part catches them, and then I say, go and check this song out and this song out, and go back into the 80s and listen to when they were sort of doing the speed metal stuff. So Metallica's another band that teenagers latch onto, and it stays with them forever. So in 2075, teenagers will still be latching on to Ride the Lightning and various other Metallica fantastic songs. All right, another honorable mention, Guns N' Roses. I mean, they're another one of those bands that when a kid listens to Welcome to the Jungle, it hooks them. And again, they want to go and check out the full catalog, right? Another band that's still touring, obviously Metallica's still touring, they're very active. Guns N' Roses. I think they just announced a new tour. I'm not so sure about going to see them because I don't think Axl's today is what he used to be, but they're an iconic band. They got great songs. They launched a whole genre of music with the style of music that they played. I always loved their carefree attitude. They're the epitome of rock stardom, is Guns N' Roses. Their look, the way that, the stories about the partying and whatnot, it's ultimate rock stardomness in Guns N' Roses. So if you're looking to investigate bands and music where they're at, not only is the band great, but they're true rock stars, I always think of Guns N' Roses as being the ultimate rock star band. All right, the last honorable mention is very, very important to me. This is one of the oldest bands on my list, but Black Sabbath / Ozzy. I think that, well, they started metal. Arguably the greatest metal band of all time is Black Sabbath. I love Black Sabbath. I discovered them at a young age. I've always loved them. Sadly, the lead singer Ozzy died recently, but that is another one of those bands that launched an entire genre and all the subgenres that follow metal. I think metal has the most subgenres of any form of music on earth, but Sabbath started it all. That first album with that bell on the very first song, you know, Black Sabbath. What an incredible band. I love all their music. And they're another one of those bands that Paranoid is the introductory song. You know, you listen to Paranoid and the guitar riff and those, you know, the shots that are in there on the stops, that hooks you. But then I get my students to check out The Wizard. I get them to check out, you know, a variety of songs, Sweet Leaf and whatnot, from all their albums, because I don't think arguably, I don't think Sabbath put out a dud album. I actually like all their albums. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, well, album number 4 wasn't very good, whatever. This is just my opinion. Everybody has their opinion. I don't think Sabbath put out a dud album. I love all their stuff. So Sabbath is going to be another one of those bands on the radio. Kids are going to want to learn how to play Paranoid and a few of the other songs. And it is a music that is going to last. If you listen to heavy metal music, you have to be a Sabbath fan, because that's where it all started. You know, you have to look to the roots. Anytime a kid discovers a band, a kid comes into me and says, oh yeah, man, I'm really into, you know, Megadeth. Well, that's great. You know, listen to Megadeth, but also go and listen to Black Sabbath. I always give them the roots of where the music comes from. You know, like for Led Zeppelin, I tell them to go and listen to the blues. You know, so depending on the band that they're interested in, I always get them to do the research that, well, this is how they discovered their sound. Go and check these bands out that leads to Led Zeppelin, that leads to Pink Floyd, whatever, you know. All right, so those are my honorable mentions. Number 1 is going to come as absolutely no surprise. I know you're all waiting, anticipating. You can't wait for the announcement of number 1, but it is, of course, the Beatles. My favorite band of all time, arguably it's between Rush and the Beatles, but the Beatles, they changed music. There's never been a band in their short history. They're only around, technically, I'm going to say 1960 to 1970, because they were around in 1970. They just hadn't reached the fame. But they were an active band, and they were playing in 1960 in the Mersey beat and in the Mersey sound in Liverpool, a little bit in Germany at that time, I think, as well. You know, they traveled back and forth between Liverpool and Germany when they were doing their touring before they hit it big and started to develop in 1962. So I know that there's that red CD or red album that says the Beatles hits 62 to 66, but I like to go back a little bit further to 1960. So no band has created the music catalog. I believe they have 300 songs, probably more if you include the songs that they did between 60 and 62, because there's actually quite a few recordings in that 2-year era, in the very early days when they were influenced by skiffle music, that is never really reached it onto too many albums. They're like the BBC live recordings, live at the BBC and stuff like that. There's also bootleg copies of them playing at the Cavern and playing in Germany and stuff like that. And they were playing a lot of cover tunes that they never actually officially recorded and put out on official albums. But I like to still include those songs. So over 300 songs if you include that 2-year period. In those 300 songs, in my opinion, almost all of them, there's a couple of duds in there, but for the most part, the Beatles recorded perfect songs, in my opinion. Incredible musicianship, incredible vocals. The stuff they did in the studio from 60s, 65-ish, where it started. They started to get interesting ideas about what they're going to do with their music in the studio. My favorite album of all time is Rubber Soul. Incredible album. My favorite song of all time is In My Life, off the Rubber Soul album. Absolutely incredible. The Beatles are never going to go away. The Beatles are our modern day Mozart, our modern day Beethoven. If you are not familiar with classical music, the Beatles were influenced by these guys. I've seen a lot and researched a lot about the Beatles' music and where did they come up with the ideas. Now, obviously, people think it's, blues, rock and roll, Elvis, skiffle music of the time, and all that does factor in, even jazz music, but we can go even further back to get Beatle influence, and that's back to as far back as Bach in the 16th century or 17th century, So music that is iconic and legendary and amazing should never die. We should always keep it alive. And the Beatles are, like I said, the modern day Mozart. Mozart is still alive today. You still hear Mozart on the radio if you listen to classical channels. You'll hear Mozart and Beethoven in so many movies. How many movies have you heard classical music, not just Mozart and Beethoven, but classical music? Classical music is still vibrant, and the Beatles will also still be vibrant and listened to. I introduce the Beatles to all my students. Why wouldn't I? They're the greatest band of all time, in my opinion. There's nobody that's ever going to be more iconic than the Beatles in rock music. Now, rock music seems to be dying out. You'll notice that my youngest band is Nirvana, and they came out around 1990, 1991, around there. There's nothing happening right now that I can say is going to be like Mozart. Nothing that's going to be like the Beatles. Nothing that's even going to be like Nirvana that's happening right now. It's a sad state of affairs right now. But the bands that I did, the 6 that I just listed, and the 3 honorable mentions, those are bands in 2075 are still going to be listened to. They're still going to be relevant. Kids are going to be discovering them. Kids are still going to be getting excited about Smells Like Teen Spirit, excited about Enter Sandman, etc., etc. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. This is my opinion. Please keep that in mind. There's always people that drag people through the mud that state, oh, what about the Who? What about the Doors? What about Cream? What about this band, that band? Yeah, I'm not disputing any of those. This is just my opinion. So give me your top 6 and maybe a few honorable mentions too, and give me a little explanation. Why do you think that these bands are iconic? Maybe you totally agree with me and just give me a thumbs up. Or you totally disagree and give me your list of bands that you think. Music is subjective. It's opinionated. One song that somebody can absolutely love and adore and think it's going to last forever can be hated by the next person. So this is just one drummer's, one musician's opinion. And some are going to agree, some are going to disagree, whatever. But I want to thank you guys for subscribing and watching. Please like and subscribe some more if this is your first time watching the channel. And as always, keep drumming and listening to these bands and keep music alive. Let's not let rock music die. Take care. See ya.